Hello, I'm Soycat, and in concerning Europe news today, we have Poland seeking access to nuclear arms, as well as looking to build a 500,000 man army. This is a sign that they are very worried about a war in Europe, specifically a war with Russia, where the United States is maybe a bit less of a reliable ally. And this is a really interesting story, which will allow us to talk about the politics of conscription and what exactly has happened with NATO's armies since 1990, because the news is maybe worse than you think, but also what it is that exactly is going down. And let's start by talking about the Prime Minister of Poland, because I think this is hugely interesting. Donald Tusk used to be the leader of Poland, but unlike in most federal systems, where he went up to be the European Parliament's head of the biggest party, he then went back down to being the Prime Minister of Poland again, and so of course he's very pro-Europe, he's very pro-NATO, and so this means that when he's talking about being, accessing nuclear arms, he isn't talking about Poland acquiring them himself, thankfully, but instead he's trying to talk seriously with France about being protected by the French nuclear umbrella. This isn't a wild idea. The president of France has specifically opened the possibility of other countries using France's nuclear deterrent to protect Europe. In other words, right now, every country of nuclear weapons reserves the right, whether they would actually do it is a different question, every country of nukes reserves the right to say, hey, if you attack us, we will nuke you back. Attacking us is a non-option because everyone will die, and in effect that means that they are uninvadable countries, and France has opened up the possibility of allowing other countries that are friendly to be protected by this same nuclear deterrent. In other words, invade Poland and, oh, you might not exist in the future. This is a really great idea on the surface until you start to actually talk about the practicalities, and so what Tusk has stressed is that Poland should not just restrict itself to these conventional weapons, and so it's looking to working out how to have unconventional weapons, and specifically is also trying to massively increase the size of their army. The Polish military right now is about 200,000, the third largest in NATO, that is true by the way, after the US and Turkey, and they are looking to massively increase it by saying every healthy man should want to train to be able to defend the homeland in case of need. We will prepare it in such a way that it will not be a burden on people. This is actually kind of nuts because Poland already spends, I think it's the highest in NATO, all of NATO, on their defense, 4.7% of their gross domestic product, and they're looking to raise it to 5%. Poland is a country, I think, very understandably, that has been partitioned so many times throughout history that has been, basically, unfortunately, the fate of the Western powers and the Eastern powers deciding to divide it up, and Poland is aware that its existence comes with a high price that they are willing to pay. However, something that is important to note before we talk anything more is the fact that Tusk has underlined this is not a return to conscription, which only ended in Poland in 2008, which might seem nuts that they have the third largest army, but they don't have conscription and don't intend to have it. But here's something fun. This is a list of countries which currently use conscription, and basically we can say that any country in red actively will conscript every person. So obviously Ukraine, every fighting age person serves in the military. Interestingly enough, this is also true for Switzerland, Austria, Israel. There's a few surprising ones in here too, in my opinion. Iran and I think Iran and Greece are quite surprising. We've got lots of bizarre countries. Colombia, Cuba. There are lots of places where you have to serve in the military, and lots of places where you almost have to, like the Nordic countries and Russia. Lots of countries say we need fighting men, and rather than having to run ads on social media, we would rather just say you have to join the military, good luck with that. And so this is something which is going to probably increase as time goes on, because ultimately one of the fun things about the post-1990 consensus of the world, as soon as the Cold War ended and all of the proxy wars that came with it ended, not only did the number of deaths in the world come down, but also the number of people who needed to fight in the military substantially went down too. A lot of people make fun of Germany for this in particular, like, oh yeah, their armed forces are down 65%, but the truth is it's heavily true across all of NATO. Even the United States went from having 2.1 million people in their military to 1.3 million. A part of this is due to the fact that there are fewer threats, obviously, but by the way, that is the highest absolute cut. The amount of US troops has gone down by more than the previous number of Italian troops plus Spanish troops combined, just want to mention that. But yeah, the interesting thing about this is that the numbers have gone down partially because there's less need for a war, but also partially as you professionalize, as you decrease the numbers, you can increase the quality. 189,000 well-trained soldiers isn't necessarily better than 545,000 just about trained soldiers, but it's not as bad. It's not 65% worse. It's not 49% worse in the UK, and it's not 38% worse in the United States. The truth is that lowering the amount of military personnel kind of makes sense in a world where you're not having ground wars, right? I think all of the actual military threats that existed in the world prior to 2022, or prior to 2014 if we're being actually real with ourselves. But all of the real threats in the world have basically been sea and air based, and so having a large number of troops that you can put on the ground wouldn't have helped you were there a Taiwan situation, were there a South Korea, North Korea situation, if there were to be a threat in the Middle East, having hundreds of thousands of soldiers doesn't make that situation any amount easier. But now we have actually gotten to the point where a ground war is on the table again. Oh yeah, isn't this exciting? The answer should be no, by the way. I hope that's what you're saying. But yeah, there is a really big concern, I think, that if Poland is going, basically doubling the size of its military, if Poland is going from being the biggest NATO spender to spending even more, is this a real thing that we should, is this a sign that we should be concerned about? And I think the answer is probably yes. I think the truth of the matter is that more and more countries are building up their defenses, and that is a sign that everyone thinks a war with Russia is coming. And the truth is that I think that security works on the level of I think the idea of the nuclear deterrent is that you would just never invade France because you're worried about being nuked. We've gotten to the point now where you might never invade a NATO country because you're worried about all of NATO attacking you. But what if one NATO country, perhaps the biggest NATO country, makes comments about how their allies are basically leeching off them and how they'd get away with not doing it? That is the concern. And I think the real concern, if we're going to talk about it, because a lot of people have asked me to talk about the situation with Ukraine. I think we saw the craziest thing, the craziest shift in Ukraine politics and how they're seen in the world, thanks to the White House recently. And so a lot of people are saying, Toycat, I need you to explain what's going on here. But the truth is, the exact situation is very hard to explain. Why did Trump invite the leader of a country in just to yell at them effectively? But I want to bring up something which is really crucial and that helps me. I think rather than just saying it's reality TV or saying, oh, he's an isolationist who wants the US not to be involved in anyone, or even just to say, you know what, he's willing to play politics at the expense of a country, I think all of these explanations kind of miss the point. I think the really shocking point can come from this net favorability of Volodymyr Zelensky from US adult citizens. So what you'll notice is something shocking, which is since that meeting, basically, as you can see right here, I think everyone in the US was in favor of Ukraine until somewhere around about the last year, where, as you can see, basically, most people in the US are still thinking Ukraine are the people we need to help. But as Trump has been putting down more and more olive branches towards Russia, as Trump is publicly berating the leader, it has become a partisan shift, and this means. The shocking thing about this, in my opinion, is this means that for maybe the first time in a long time, there is a president that can not just respond to public opinion, but actively shape it. If the president says this man is bad and he is a dictator who's unelected because, why aren't they holding elections, or whatever the things they say, he can actively change the opinion. Maybe not of the broader public, you can see a lot of people become more in favor of him, but he can change the opinion of his party, which is actually something that is surprisingly rare. I think having a figure who can say, this is our party's opinion now, we're voting for it, is kind of shocking. And why is that the new opinion? Is it a way to get Europe to rearm? Is it a way to say, you know what, there is looking like there's going to be a war in Europe and we don't want it to be our war? I think there's a big question about this. Is it ultimately a move of, I think that something a lot of US leaders have been saying for a while, it's not just Trump, but it has been particularly Trump, is European countries really need to re-up on their defenses. And obviously, if you look at the cut in military budgets and personnel, it has been slightly stronger in Europe than it has been inside of the United States. Obviously, if we exclude Turkey from our calculation, as well as Poland. But it has been in Western European countries, rich, prosperous Western European countries. These countries have been cutting their military budget, and so the easiest way to make them increase it is saying, guess what? You'd be on your own if there was a military engagement, and I think that increasing their budget is something the US thought would be double beneficial. One, they would get to save money, and two, they would get to sell these weapons to people. I think that second part hasn't happened. Sweden, the European defense industry has massively upped itself. As Sweden's joined NATO, Saab in particular, which makes its own fighter, a lot of European manufacturers are massively gaining, and so Europe is getting a huge defense industry, which, is that a good thing to have multiple competing defense industries in the world? Or would it be better if there was just one gun store somewhere in, all the way in Ohio we could all go to buy our stuff? That's an interesting debate by itself. But the much more interesting point that I want to raise with this video is that ultimately Europe is expecting some form of engagement. But even though it sounds bad that we're putting all these people in the armed forces and conscription, does happen, and that we are basically more or less expecting to spend huge amounts of our national wealth that could be spent on other things on war, I think we're not. The interesting thing about defense spending is how even when you're spending money to look as aggressive as possible, it's not actually aggression. If you think about it this way, the more we spend on our military, the more we won't need that very same military. It's one of those ridiculous things. It's like, I don't know, the more you look after your health, the more money you spend looking after your health, the less time you'll need to spend in the hospital. Seems unintuitive, but then also, why not take your health insurance money and throw it into eating healthier and doing exercise and whatnot is a really interesting question for an individual, and the countrywide version of that is effectively, you can min-max either level, where you can say, actually, let's get rid of our armed forces, basically, all but the bare minimum to defend ourselves, and let's just say screw it to any interests in the globe. That's what you could say, especially if you're an island. In fact, it's borderline what Ireland has done, if we're being true of ourselves, and a lot of other countries. Iceland literally has done it, if I'm being 100% truthful. They have no army, they have a coast guard, but if you want to invade Iceland, the only thing stopping you is the fact that they are in NATO, and a lot of other people with militaries will show up and stop you. But yeah, the truth is defense spending is one of the messiest parts of the budget, because if you spend money on defense correctly, people should look at it and say, did we just spend all of that money on effectively nothing? And as we are seeing right now, the fact of the matter is we have to spend a whole bunch of money on stuff that will have no value to us, so that Russia doesn't think that they have any chance of being able to invade the West. And is that actually a good idea? I think if I'm going to now level my opinion on this, no. I think that, I think the truth is even with the current NATO forces, even with their massively reduced soldiers, I think the odds, even if Poland literally does nothing, keeps their military spending at 4.7%, the truth is I think even if this happens, I don't think that Europe is actually going to be attacked. I do think, though, that we are getting closer and closer to the point of being in a major war, not because we're not spending enough military, but because more and more leaders are starting to realize that, the Trump strategy, you might have seen this with the tariff situation of, literally saying, we are willing to tariff you unless you do stuff for us, and then, you don't do enough stuff for them, and they actually do it. The same thing could happen with a war. You could threaten, if you are France, or if you're Poland, or if you're the United States, we will go to war unless you do X thing that is good for us. And obviously, if Russia then doesn't do X thing, what are you going to do? If you want to show that you're a good, that you mean what you say, you've got to go to war. And I feel like brinkmanship is actually the thing that's going to take us into a war, not our lack of defense or our increased spending on defense. But that's my current take. I really want to be wrong. I want you to watch this video and say, Toycat, you are an idiot, and here's why. I don't think we're ever going to threaten that, because I do think we are getting... I think we've gone from a world where it is accepted and widely known that, yeah, within I think I mentioned this, the two negotiating lines that every democracy suffers from is that you don't want things that are unpopular in your country, and you don't want to go to war. Democracy hates war, because guess who fights in it? It's not the leaders who negotiate it. It's the people. It's me and you, So democracy hates war, and democracy hates unpopular decisions, because we can vote those out. I think the concern is when you have a leader that might be willing to gain concessions at a slight cost, and when you have a leader that can literally change public opinion. You can make war pretty damn popular if you want to, which is bad. We want leaders, the reason that Russia is concerning is because Putin can somehow shape a war where he goes into someone else's country and seizes their territory into, oh yeah, there were some bad people in there and we had to stop it. We're doing such a good favor with our special military operation, and the fact that people believe it, not just in Russia, but some people in the West believe it, that is the concern. If popular opinion can be so easily shaped against the freedom and independence of individuals, that is what we should all be concerned about, because that is the condition that will lead us to war. I think and so if that is true, that is the reason we need to increase our defense spending. And so I hope that we do, but also I hope that we don't ever need it. I hope we spend a whole ton of money on defense that goes absolutely to waste, and that is the only part of life where I think that is true. Anyway, thank you for watching this video. I hope you all enjoyed. I want to talk about some more European political systems. I think I have way more fun talking about the politics of Europe and whatnot because of how wacky and different they all are. So I think I want to make a video about fun election systems. Let me know if you'd like to see it, and I'll do exactly nothing with that information because I'll either make it or I won't. Oh, by the way, here's something interesting, by the way. Just, this is Patreon, and they now have a system where Apple refuses to let them be exempt from their 30% fee. So if you go to Patreon, one, apparently they have a free membership tier now. You can access a lot of my stuff without paying. But also, two, if you do it on iOS, you can see it will cost you 4.45% more. And in exchange, that will result in the same amount of money. I can set it the other way up, where like I say, oh yeah, Apple can just take money from me rather than you. And I think this is hugely interesting, like the economics of how Patreon works. And maybe you think this is interesting too. But yeah, if you would like to throw me money for lobster rolls and questionable editing and thumbnails, then you can do precisely that. But otherwise, thank you for watching. Second channel, don't care. Goodbye. You know, where in Ohio should the store be? I think it should be in Canal Winchester, or, you know, actually, okay, wait, there's gonna be a good one. I think Londonderry is where we should all go to get our weapons. We know they've got them there. Oh man, this is a small town in Ohio, huh? Anyway, thank you for watching. Make sure to meet me at the Family Dollar store, where I'll be selling discount military surplus. And second channel, don't care. Bye.